when we think of Jacques Chirac in the Middle East, we think of that famous footage of him in the Old City during his visit in the 90s. What was the reaction to that?
Yes, it was an extraordinary television moment, wasn't it? Because what we actually saw was the real nature of the man. He emerges from that as a lover of liberty, of equality, very French, calling out aggressive behaviour around him, walking through the old city. He then later in that same visit refused to go into a church when there were armed Israeli men ahead of him. He said, I'm not going in to that church until the armed men leave. So he really made a statement, and he was regarded as a hero in the Palestinian side. They had a lot of time for him for years afterwards for that stand. And by the way, looking at that footage today, it's extraordinary. I cannot imagine a leader today walking through those crowded streets in the same way. When I know that when Donald Trump came to the old city, it was entirely sterile when he did that walk. So there's such a change when you look back at the 1990s. Nevertheless, he didn't let any of that faze him. He remained his independent and quite brave self and made his stand.
Now, was Chirac a significant figure in Israel?
Yes, he was. Just for example, he came more than once. He was a controversial figure in Israel because of the feeling that he was so closely linked to the Arab world. However, I've heard a former Israeli ambassador to France talking today about Chirac's role, and he said that inside Israel there was too much of a tendency to criticise him. One former Israeli foreign minister accused him of being anti-Semitic, and this enraged Jacques Chirac. He was furious because it offended him to his core, and he wouldn't take that. He wouldn't meet him for, I think, nearly 2 years as a result of that comment. And also, it's important to remember that Jacques Chirac was the first French president to actually acknowledge the role of the collaborationist Vichy government in the Holocaust during World War II. So I think when you look back now, in addition to how very charming he was and how very suave, which every person I've heard speaking here has described, in addition to that, there's a feeling that he was an even-handed and independent world leader looking out for France's interests in the Middle East.